Sure. Energy flowing.
Well, we do have a quorum,
Yay.
just by one more than we had at the last meeting, which meant we didn't have a quorum for that. But there was an act of God going on then. Not here, but everywhere else around us, it seemed. So James is going to help us with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank all of you for coming.
See, I told you we'd have some more
Well, I knew Pasha would show up. She has a lot further to go than the rest of us, down the street. But she's probably got a lot of pressure on herself. But thank you for coming. Left my glasses in the car, but I'm going to try to do this later. Just to update you all a little bit on where we are on everything. Tonight, hopefully, we won't have a lengthy meeting, but you never know. Where we stand right now is that we are looking at deciding on the one issue that Kevin Grace brought up, how we're going to deal with that, because he made, I think you all got copies of a couple of options. One was his original take, and the other one was a little more restrictive rule that might apply to the county manager and the county attorney. So we'll be talking about that. The other part of the agenda that we'll be dealing with is scheduling our public hearings. We have to have 3. They have to be within a 20-day window. We've identified some dates. We've not identified locations. So we'll be talking about that as well.
If we have nothing, if we have nothing we're putting forward, do we have to have those meetings? We don't have to have meetings to say that we have nothing, do we?
No, we don't.
Okay, all right.
But as of now, we have one thing.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Give me a card. All right. Item number 4. Approval of our previous minutes, which go back to March 6th. Any motion on that?
Move that they be accepted as printed.
I have one modification, please, on page 7. Yes, sir. There's the references to the 1965 Constitution, and it should be 1968 Constitution. It's the 4th line down on the top of page 7.
Okay. We'll blame that on the LBJ, even though it has nothing to do. It's in the right years.
Just one of those things. Right.
Welcome.
I move that be accepted as printed, with the exception of the correction.
With the correction, you have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, Dana, can you give us the Reader's Digest version of where we are? And I appreciate you getting that
Yeah, I revised
latest piece out.
Yeah, we had prepared a document, a proposed report with the resolution and everything to this county commission for the last meeting, but then when the meeting was canceled, I just revised that introduction to update the dates. So that's the only change in the document that was distributed at the last meeting. The way I've structured this is just pretty similar format to what Orange County uses and COE used and others. We just talk about an introduction. We talk about how we met, how many times we met, and if we do, in fact, go forth and have public hearings on the question, we would insert those dates. An introduction on the concept behind the proposal. Then the next section talks about the proposed text, which in this case, the way this document is drafted is it would prohibit the county manager from taking part in political activity relating to county commission elections, and the county attorney as well shall not take part in any political activity relating to county commission elections. So that's the new text that would go in the charter online and in the county's records if in fact it's approved by the voters. Then the next section you'll see is called the ballot proposal. And that's really all you see as a voter when you go into the polls. There's a limitation on the number of words you can use for the title and the number of words you can use in the summary. So your title cannot exceed 15 words and your summary cannot exceed 75 words. So at the bottom of page 3, you'll see that I created a ballot title and a ballot summary that fit within the statutory parameters. Just as a side note, when these are translated into Spanish, you don't have to use the same stringent word requirement. There's some more flexibility allowed because there are different words that are used differently. And then finally, page 4 is the resolution that the proposed resolution to the Board of County would be of the Board of County Commissioners, whereby they would adopt this language that we just discussed for purposes of placing the language on the ballot in November. What stands between that right now is y'all approving this or toying with the language or however you want to revise the language, approving the concept, and then, as we were discussing, having the 3 public hearings within 20 days to let the public have input on this proposal.
Okay. I'm going to use chairman's privilege here a minute. Since you threw me a curveball, I'm going to throw you a knuckleball back.
Okay.
Tell us what you have in mind.
I think, first of all, I think that after thinking about this and seeing Kevin present both sides of it, this is an issue that could be done as a policy issue rather than a charter issue. It could be put right in the contract of a county attorney or a county manager. So I'm thinking
Employment contract.
an employment contract, if they so choose. It doesn't seem like it's something that the voters should have to vote on. And if it would be okay, I'd like to make a motion that we just move forward without making any changes to the Constitution or to our charter at all. And we just say thank you and possibly have this be our final meeting because there's nothing else.
I'll second that. I have a question also in that. Again, why do we pick that department? Why did we pick the attorney and county manager?
They're the only 2 that report directly to the county commission.
Well, you could have got a constitutional officer could have just discussing the same.
But the constitutional officer does not report to the county commission
Okay.
or anybody at the county.
All right. Okay.
There's a relationship there,
Okay.
depending on which constitutional officer. But that's the reason.
Okay.
So, subject to change, if it's in this amendment, then it's locked in for, 7 years?
6.
6 years? Otherwise, it's subject to be changed whenever the county changes, they decide to change it. So, one is like semi-permanent, the other is subject to negotiation. Okay.
But it hasn't been it's my understanding that this is not a problem in Seminole County. So if there's not a problem, why are we going to make such a huge permanent change?
Bob?
I don't think it's an actual problem right now. My concern about the amendment, and I know Kevin, this was a hot button subject for Kevin because he's very into being a county manager.
He was there.
The whole conflict of interest with county managers and seeing county managers go beyond what they should be doing as county managers. So it was really fairly personal to Kevin as to that. My thought was that I don't really have a problem with the substance of it, and I don't really like the idea of the commission negotiating with their county attorney, whether he gets involved in politics or not. I mean, that whole discussion sounds strange to me. I mean, but there are codes of ethics, there are professional codes of ethics, there are legal codes of ethics, and there are other things that already bind these people. If we were considering a broader charter provisions on ethics for all elected officials and all county elected officials and staff and everybody, I think the voters might be more interested in a targeted amendment, which really only deals with 2 offices. And so I think it's kind of narrow to go through the process of what you have to do to get it in the charter. This is not an unusual event. I think it was the last charter commission. I think the one I sat on rather than sat in the back of the room on, where we got down to the end of the process with only one item.
That wasn't the last time.
Surviving.
That wasn't the last time.
It was the one.
I think it was.
No, we
No.
did 2.
Yeah.
2 of them.
Anyway, it was an administrative item. It was something like changing the charter commission or
I think it
commissions
was 12.
from
I think it
6
was
to
12.
10 years.
12 years ago.
Was something like that.
I think
And
so.
at the end of the process, we said that's just not significant enough to go to the expense of 3 public meetings and a whole election and preparing a ballot and all that other stuff. So we just put it aside and went forward with nothing.
I think 12 years ago is when they had all the problems. Because we went through and tried to resolve some of that language and ended up not doing anything. So it may even be farther than that.
Yeah. So, so I don't really have a problem
Last year seems like
going,
Essential.
just going and putting it aside because I think it's probably too narrow and of limited interest to anybody. If it were broader, I might go. I'd be interested in arguments on a broader provision, but I think we can set this one aside because I don't think it's significant enough.
Tom.
Wouldn't some of that fall under ethics?
Say again.
Wouldn't that fall under ethics also? About, again, talking about, a commissioner for voting and so forth.
Yeah.
Couldn't that be under ethics? So why would we need a...
Well, you can deal with ethics through a charter change, or you can deal with it through a employment contract.
Right.
The question is what is more reasonable, and I guess to Michelle's point, and it's a good one, if it ain't that big a deal,
right,
well, let's not make it that big a deal. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly.
Correct.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Well, I'll comment. I agree with you. I had similar thoughts that for such a small issue like this to go through the expense, that it's not worthwhile. If there were a bunch of other ballot amendments, yeah, I'd definitely say go through with it. But I don't think it's worth it.
I agree with Michelle. Nice idea, but it's a lot of trouble to go through for something that isn't an issue.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Like sign? All right.
Nice work, though.
Went quick, boom.
Let me say a couple of things before we adjourn, if I could. I want to, first of all, thank you all very much. I'm sure the county thanks you too. We've had a lot of meetings. We've gone through a lot of listening and presentations and learning. I still think there needs to be some kind of paper presented that would be available to future CRCs that talks about the role of the BCC versus the role of individual constitutional officers, annual reports, report cards, whatever. Things that keep the rumor mill from controlling what future CRCs do. I'm not volunteering to be in the middle of that necessarily, but I just think that that's something that ought to be on public record that we feel was important. We spent a lot of time on it. We've wrestled with it back and forth. I think we finally, came up with the right decision. But, we're going to have some new commissioners coming up. What issues are going to come up because they don't have the background and experience? So there's just a lot of things, but is that yours?
What was that?
Must be mine. It's a text. It's probably asking me if I can take my 8-year-old grandson to practice golf tomorrow. I meant to leave that in the car. I apologize. But I lost my train of thought.
I can imagine.
After all the CRS.
I want you all to really, and I sincerely mean this, we went through a process that probably no CRC's gone through before, where we really tried to understand the relationships between all these managerial roles out there. And I think we came up with ultimately the right decision. But starting into it, I wasn't clear. I was wrestling every other week with what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So anybody else that'd like to comment, that's fine too. But I just wanted to get that out there.
Thank you very much.
Personal standpoint.
Thank you very much for your hard work and corralling all of us
No
with
question
our
about it.
different ideas. I appreciate you.
Can we make?
Thank you for your service.
We need a motion of some sort to grant to the chairman and the authority to approve any minutes or execute any documents that need to be.
I'm glad we had an attorney on here because she probably would have said that.
Is that your motion?
Maybe.
I'll second that motion.
Any administrative matters that need to be done, and also you've got the authority to call us back in session if you need to for some reason. But thank you for not. I'll make that motion to grant the chairman administrative authority to approve minutes, sign documents needing the action of the Charter Commission between now and ceasing to exist.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we adjourn, our county commission chairman brought in some financial reports for the constitutional officers that we were asking about. This goes through the last fiscal year, but I think there's enough there for each one of us. If you are laying in bed tonight and you can't go to sleep, get up and read this, because I'm sure it'll make you sleep better.
This will
But John,
This is going to change everything.
oh yeah, we need somebody to make a motion now. We need to revisit everything.
There's your motion to adjourn.
John, thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Sorry, I couldn't get it to you sooner, but the CAFR just came out yesterday.
Well, that's government.
You want to mail them to the absent members?
No.
Do we have any, before we leave, do we have any public comments? Any other business? Yes.
I had a question, and excuse me because I'm Segway challenged, but you think somebody like the
The little scooter, or is that the next step?
somebody like the tax collector, not talking about the person, but the office, and that's a partisan office. Why would that be a partisan if he's collecting the taxes? How does that? I don't understand how that
Because
fits.
that's the way it's set up in the charter.
Right. Is there a reason for it? What was the logic?
It's constitution.
Don't ask me.
All right.
Something for somebody in the future to deal with. We don't have to schedule a next meeting, so since it's official, I'm going to ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second.
Anybody disagree with that? Then we're not going to. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
Vice Chairman.
He's like a Wonder Woman.
Jumping in.
I know. See?
I had to go to school board meeting tonight.
Did you?
Yeah.
Where?
Because they were